It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this Wellness Wednesday is inspired by a conversation of stuff that went on social media and a conversation with a client that I went way long with this client because it was just so enjoyable. It was a lot of kind of aha moments. It's great when those sessions go that way. But this is about when to end an argument. And at least in your head, like to stop investing in the outcome, recognize that the person is not going to be a partner in productive dialogue. And I'll do the help support this channel and then get into it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Or GoFundMe. Fund our men's groups. Friday, there's going to be, hopefully, that's still the plan, more information on how to join our Discord. Caveat being, I really messed up my shoulder. This shoulder on Friday night. Big cramp, but it's sort of working its way through. So now the other arm hurts. I think part of it is a lot more mouse usage, but then it's a bunch of stuff. But you may know I love Alice in Wonderland. This is my, I'll take the notes out because this is the folder I use for the boss fight game notes. And so that this stuff's kind of secret. No, you can't see. But I want to show you okay, I'm going to put a blank piece of paper in this. I should have thought about this because there's actually notes that I haven't transcribed and haven't announced in the game. So we're going to put my hip exercises from my rheumatologist in here to block it. But you'll see it's Alice in Wonderland shadows because Alice in Wonderland is magic to me. And I was using the metaphor of the caucus race from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland to explain to a client the idea of setting rules before you get into discussion, either easy or difficult, defining terms, all that stuff. Because if you don't, it's just a caucus race. Everybody's running around in circles and no one ever loses and nobody ever wins, right? It's just the perpetual motion machine of postmodern bullshit. There's an album cover name, right? There's a punk album name. No, this would be more like a Smashing Pumpkins concept album. The perpetual motion machine of postmodern bullshit. Or it's a Doom Patrol arc. Anyway, but if you don't have fail conditions, if you don't have victory conditions, how do you know if it's productive? You don't. And so I have certain rules for arguing. One is if someone says, that term bothers me, don't use it. Or if they just have a bad reaction to a term, it's better to stop using it. Because if you're just poking at a pain point again and again and again, it's not going to be very productive. You don't want to push someone into overwhelm for any reason, right? I mean, there are times on the internet where I put on Twitter, love me, love my fight, love my intense fight response. When people are assholes, I'll be like, all right, I literally have sleeves to roll up. You see how I did that? But it's like, yeah, let's subject you to your own medicine. They can never take it. And this guy on Twitter, for whatever reason, we're talking about the Middle East, and he kept going about my narrative, like your narrative to me. And I was like, don't personalize this. I didn't personalize this. You used your narrative as opposed to a narrative or the narrative. Your is making it mine. It's personal. I don't know why you were triggered by the word narrative. Sorry you got upset. Putting words in my mouth being overly personal, and a non-apology apology. 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out in a conversation. Now, why? A non-apology apology is the most basic Becky, petty, I am sulking tactic there is. If someone is so emotionally regressed or ego invested that they are pulling a non-apology apology and not owning it and correcting it, it's not worth it. For me, and this is something you have to set for yourself. My standards don't have to be your standards, but as I say, and it's not therapy, other people don't have to like your boundaries, but you do have to respect them. And that was the other thing about, oh, you're being triggered by the word narrative. I wasn't. That's ridiculous. But he thought I was. And he kept using it. That's a problem. If you actually think a particular word is having an adverse reaction in the other person, respect that. If you're not, you're knowingly hurting them. And nothing's worth that. This is one of my personal rules because of my own personal history. And that, the biggest, baddest dog in the yard thing that we were trained coming up, look bigger than you are, be scarier than other people. I don't want to hurt people that way anymore. It's not good for me. It's not good for them. It's one thing to accidentally hurt someone, like cause someone pain. And I will deliberately annoy people, especially on social media, because get over yourself. But hurt them? No. If I actually think something is legitimately hurting someone, that's a rule for myself. And that there is this much space for me personally between hating someone and being afraid of them. And I refuse to be afraid of people. And therefore I refuse to actively hate people. When I hate someone, and it's very rare. It's very rare I'll actually feel hate for a person. That is usually a self-defense mechanism kicking in my experience. I'm pretty ragey, like I said, overdeveloped fight response. But hate's really rare. I have a deficit there. And I do believe it's a deficit. I think other people feel it much more intensely than I do. And I think I've been taken advantage of in the past because I can't muster that. There's a boundary, there's a defense mechanism that is missing in me or underdeveloped. And so I'm aware of that. I still don't like feeling like I hate someone. There are people, family members, I have gone no contact with because I realized it's either go no contact and love them but recognize they're not good for me, as opposed to staying in contact and being consumed by hate. And I don't want to do that. Hate is not healthy. Hate is destructive, not productive. Those are my rules. So when I start feeling really angry, like I'm going to blow angry, or legitimately trauma triggered, which does still happen sometimes, I walk away. Learned my lesson live tweeting a E3 Xbox press conference live, like right in the theater, and got triggered by a tone of voice off a female character in the Witcher 3 trailer that year. It was the combination of the voice and the subject matter that just set me off. And I'm not going to waste time deconstructing why, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I don't remember if I had just been diagnosed or it was just after being diagnosed, but I wasn't I wasn't there yet. I didn't understand what was happening to me, and I just lost it in live tweets. And that was one of the ones Gamergate found and made me miserable about it. It's one of the few tweets ever that I've actually deleted. Not because, I'm trying to hide anything. I don't want to be constantly reminded of a time I got trauma triggered in public, and even though I owned it and said this is what happens, like bullshit, and it was a dark time. But I learned my lesson. And so now when I feel that, because now I recognize how it feels. It's just like this eruption. It feels like, Luffy from One Piece going gamma gamma, right before he's about to like fist, only not at all happy or shonen. It's just rawr, rage mode. And it's like, okay, even in person, time to stop, time to step away. And if people don't let me step away, the worst, and this happened a few weeks back, the worst when I'm like that is if somebody physically grabs me. Woohoo! Not good. Now, I kept my shit together, but was fucked up for quite a few days after that. But this is the thing. I know myself. I know these limits and boundaries and needs and standards. It's very important to know yours. And it's very important to suss out whether another person has a sense of their own. Because if they don't, as the duration of the argument goes on, the likelihood of a productive outcome goes down. And so that's why, for me, respecting boundaries, even if you don't understand why a word bothers somebody, I just stop using it. And I don't respect people who don't, because it's a simple thing and it's kind of an alpha move to me. Like, all right, you don't like that? I don't need to use it. I can use another one. I can do this all day, Captain America. And the non-apology thing is just like, we know better. We know non-apology apologies are not apologies. And, this guy I was fighting with refused to acknowledge the non-apology apology. He just kept going, nope, yep. And it's like, oh my God, you've regressed to an 8-year-old who's refusing to eat dinner. When someone's at that point, you're not going to get anywhere. It is literally, and I do mean literally, not about you in that moment. Because a stupid Twitter fight or anything over an issue is not, you do not expect a profound psychological regression at that point. That is their own trauma they cannot admit to. And when you handle your own, you get real good at seeing it in other people. You're like, oh, this is what's happening. Well then, all right, backing away. Another thing for me is when a person can't admit they are having emotions. Because if somebody can admit they are angry, sad, frightened, whatever, okay, you can predict what they're going to do. You can work with that. Furthermore, if you declare you are something, I am not angry, I'm hurt, and someone keeps saying, you're angry. Well, that's textbook gaslighting. And gaslighting is another thing where, let me get to that. But if somebody can't acknowledge, like this guy on Twitter, we were talking about dead children in Gaza. Not going to belabor that one because of YouTube content standards, but there is no way for a non-sociopathic person to contemplate that and not be upset. It's horrifying. You know, if you said, what's the worst thing you can think of? Somebody might actually say dead kids in Gaza and mean it. This guy claimed he wasn't upset at all. Bullshit. Bullshit. I call bullshit. With cause. When someone's bullshitting themselves that way, again, nothing to do with me, but not a good partner in discussions, right? Nothing's going to get solved if a person can't admit dead children or war zone, inherently upsetting. Holy crap, even pretend to care, buddy, right? He was upset. He couldn't admit it to himself. And so he ended up sulking like a 6-year-old. Happens. Not productive. I am not saying any of this stuff makes someone a bad person. I am saying it leads to unproductive conflict. That's why these rules are there. So I don't act like a bad person, and I don't tolerate assholedom, uncalled for assholedom in other people. A good zinger in something is fine if I know it's not personal for someone. But the minute it starts to feel emotionally compromised, nope, all the rules change. We go very slow and we are very clear. And because of slow and clear, and on that gaslighting thing, someone starts putting words in my mouth, or I give them 3 things, they only focus on one. Like I did it for this reason, this reason, this one, you know, you issued a non-apology apology. You didn't respect what you thought was upsetting me, and you were annoying the shit out of me. You did it because you were annoyed. No, that changes the meaning. Fuck off, we're done. You know, emotionally in my head, boundary goes down, barrier goes down. Whatever, dude. You just get the trickster god at this point. We are not getting anywhere here. Bye-bye, you know. And if there's enough of those in a single conversation, it is, you know, this particular guy, even though I'd gotten along with him fine, he was always a bit of a dick, but he went way over the line on this one, and he'd have to come back with an apology, a good one, a real one, for me to ever bother with him again. The other thing that's becoming increasingly a deal breaker for me is people who claim to be sorry for like 15 seconds and then spend 50 minutes, let's down, sometimes it is that long, but let's say 20 minutes explaining why they did what they did. The longer the apology to explanation ratio goes into explanation territory, you're not seeming sorry. You're seeming sorry that a person's objecting to it. And that's a non-apology apology. Non-apology apologies always deal breakers because it's putting ego before resolutions. It's putting ego before productive solutions. And standard rules of conflict. When one or both sides want war, there will be war. When both sides want peace, there'll be peace. In order to get a productive resolution, both sides need to want peace. This is the reality in the micro and in the macro, right? And this is when we come to gaslighting. When someone keeps saying you thought things or you felt things that you didn't think or feel, especially when it comes to intents. This is a thing about politics. I see, you know, my thing about clearly implied. There's no such thing. An implication is inherently unclear. But everybody becomes a mind reader. And one of the things they teach you in effective communications and, you know, de-escalation is cut the heuristics, assume nothing. I had a really good outcome with a conversation with this guy who was coming at me a little hard. He was clearly pretty young. English may also not have been his first language, but, it was about the Middle East again. And he said something that could have been nothing, could have been a real dig. So instead of going, you are clearly implying this, no, I said, what are you implying here? And the guy responded, nothing. This is all I'm trying to say. It's like, oh, all right, cool. I asked instead of told him what was in his head. Really fucking simple to do. So many people don't. We think we have to be mind readers to protect ourselves. We think we have to anticipate other people's intentions and needs, and that is actually wrong. You come at things from a much stronger position if you don't. If you catch yourself and go, wait, what did they actually say here as opposed to what I'm anticipating or what I'm afraid they're going to say? Let's deal with what somebody said. You get much better results. And when you actually start listening to the words the person actually used, you start to see the gaslighting. You start to see, well, you clearly implied. No, because that wasn't even in my brain. You start to see the seams. And you start to see, okay, this is a person who is actively, for whatever reason, it might not be deliberately, but it is actively misconstruing what I'm saying. They're adding or taking away from the actual statement because reasons. And it's impossible to know what their reasons are. The whole point is they're doing it. And if you call someone on that and they back up and say, you're right, you actually didn't say that, I misunderstood, that, fine. If they don't, if they just keep charging forward, they're gaslighting. And that doesn't make them a bad person. That doesn't make them deliberately manipulative. It makes them a toxic communicator because they don't understand the outcomes their tactics create. And there's a lot of that in left-wing circles. I'm not going to get into that. It's too much of a tangent, that stuff. But these are my rules of engagement. You can have different ones. It can be something as if it's moving too quickly, you need to stop. People need to slow down, or that is especially useful for people with oral processing challenges. It could be location based. I do not like fighting in cars. I have a real issue with that. Don't fight when they don't start yelling at me in a car. Too many bad experiences. I will literally, as soon as the car stops at an intersection, I will get out. People are either going to respect that or they won't. It's amazing how many people I say, I cannot handle being yelled at in a car. I'm not yelling. Okay, you need to lower your voice. It's too much for me. I'm not yelling. You're accusing me of yelling. Lower your voice, please slow down. You accuse me of yelling. I wasn't yelling, and their voice is getting louder and louder, and then I GTFO. That is a pointless conflict. That is when it's wrecked upon the rocks. Other people may be perfectly fine. Some people need eye contact in conversations. Some people are better if you're sitting side by side. I've seen research that some men, more than women, prefer side by side. It's less confrontational as opposed to direct eye contact. It's cats versus dogs, right? You stare at a dog, the dog usually backs down. You stare at a cat, the cat may go for your face. It's called the challenge threshold. And obviously, individual mileage may vary based on the animals, the individual animal in question. But That was what it was like with my cats and my dogs. Looking away with a cat is we're cool, whereas a dog, you have to, I am the alpha, I am in charge, no peon, you obey, because dogs will test you if you don't do that. That was the big issue. I had code switching from cat ownership to dog ownership. It was a rough landing. People are like that. You have to meet people halfway where they're meeting you on your terms and you're meeting them on their terms. Both have to be there for an argument to be productive, and healthy conflict is possible. Mary Jess and I have it all the time. The thing is, because our conflict is productive, we very rarely have barn burners because it's resolved fairly quickly. We both follow the same rules, and so we're good. It is a developed skill. It is a learned skill because one, you have to figure out what your rules are. You have to figure out what your standards and practices are. But two, you actually have to practice applying them because it's hard if you grew up in, an environment with no boundaries or weak boundaries, right, Scout? Scout is big on boundaries. But yeah, think about it and start. I'm big on rule of three. Princess Sparkle Muffin is not good at the rule of three. I like the rule of three. Three is a good, not too many for someone to remember, not too few that you're sacrificing too many of your own needs. And so what you do is like, okay, this is what I need to keep the conflict on an even keel. People are either going to make active attempts to respect that, which is good. It's going to make you feel safer in the social environment. Or they're going to thumb their nose at it. They're going to be, yeah, what are you going to do? I said it, make me, like that asshole did with, oh, you're triggered by the word narrative. But he said it again and again. And I said to him, do you realize you just repeated a word you think I'm triggered by? He melted down in a series of tweet self-immolations shortly after that. Because he couldn't admit he was having feelings. And that sounds so stupid, but it is. But it's amazingly common because feelings happen faster than thoughts, and people who have this warped self-concept as beings of pure logic. There's a reason I don't like Immanuel Kant. There's no such thing as pure reason. Humans don't do that. That's the problem. That's the reason so much philosophy sounds so sociopathic. Like reading it, you're like, what the fuck is this? Because it is attempts at pure reasoning. And we know people aren't like that. We have an emotion. And it takes a huge amount of practice to break down that jigsaw puzzle. Because you have to it's like a jigsaw puzzle that's been misassembled. And you have to pull it all apart to put it back together in a way that is actually complete and useful. And that takes years, trust me. But it's never too early or too late to start doing that. So figure out your 3 rules for arguments. Enforce them, and it's amazing how quickly you will see the difference between the people you can effectively fight with and the people who are just not worth it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or the GoFundMe, the men's groups. More info starting this Friday. Thanks for watching and be well.